Imagine finding an ancient book, passed down from generation to generation, and reading among the pages faded by time an incredible story. A story that tells of the origins of man and our civilization. A story made of divine beings, conflicts, and instructive catastrophes. This is the mysterious and fascinating story of the Book of Enoch, an ancient text, and for some it would even be the oldest book ever found. Tradition attributes the text to Enoch, the biblical patriarch and direct heir of Adam, who would have narrated in it exceptional facts and events that go beyond any imagination. Events that, read with a secular vision, could make our history much more mysterious and complex, and they could explain the many anomalies that we encounter in reconstructing our past. But before proceeding further and traveling to unknown times and places, if you haven't done so yet, we invite you to subscribe to the channel to support our work and not miss our new videos. To fully understand the importance of the Book of Enoch, we must take a step back in time to 1773, when the Scottish explorer James Bruce made an extraordinary discovery. While exploring the regions of Abyssinia, modern-day Ethiopia, Bruce came across an ancient manuscript. Brought to Europe, the text became known as the Book of Enoch. This text is written in Ge'ez, an ancient Ethiopian language, and is part of the collection of sacred books of the Ethiopian Orthodox Christian Church. It was precisely the work of the ancient scribes in Abyssinia that ensured the text was preserved and not lost over time, as happened in the rest of the world. That the text was ancient was confirmed in 1947, when the famous Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in the caves of Qumran. The Dead Sea Scrolls are among the oldest copies of biblical texts, and in our case, they confirmed at least two things. The first is that the Book of Enoch is present in these texts. Partial traces of it have been found. The second is that, surprisingly, the texts found in this remote cave and that have survived millennia are not so different from the versions that have been handed down over time and to which we today can access. This confirms that the methods of copying these writings were very efficient. We know, in fact, that those who copied and those who supervised the copying applied very precise techniques in order not to make mistakes. For example, they used the predetermined page layout, counted the individual letters that made up each line of the text, and every 5 lines written, a careful check was carried out. Any detected error required the destruction of the entire page. If this is what we have learned about the methods of copying, today we are certain that this methodology has been very effective in handing down the text in the most correct form possible. But then, why do we no longer have traces of the Book of Enoch and all the texts preceding it that the manuscript seems to have been inspired by? The text of Enoch did not enter into the canonical books handed down by Jewish and Christian religions, and therefore over time, no longer being copied, it was lost. As we said earlier, if today we still have a trace of this ancient text, we owe it mainly to the work of the Ethiopian scribes who saved the manuscript, handing it down as a sacred text. Having clarified these points, let's discover this mysterious and fascinating text and analyze the reasons that make it very interesting for the reconstruction of our origins. Enoch was the 7th patriarch from creation, according to the genealogical line that starts from Adam and descends directly from Adam through the line of Seth. The sequence of descent is as follows: Adam, Seth, Enos, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, and Enoch. Enoch is also the father of Methuselah, who in turn was the grandfather of Noah, making Enoch a direct ancestor of Noah. We know that Enoch lived on earth for 365 years, a considerable period if compared to the current life of a human being, but not for the biblical patriarchs, who on average lived about 900 years. But what makes the case of Enoch special is that he actually did not die, but was taken by God and brought into the kingdom of heaven still alive. Enoch walked with God. After fathering Methuselah, he lived for another 300 years and fathered sons and daughters. The entire life of Enoch was 365 years. Then Enoch walked with God. In the Book of Enoch, the patriarch recounts the events that led to the creation of men, but not only. The world at that time was in fact inhabited by other beings. According to the account of the book, divine beings from heaven created man, but a group of them found the daughters of men to be attractive and joined with them, giving life to a new genealogy, the Nephilim, described as gigantic beings endowed with superhuman strength. And it happened that when the sons of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters, and the angels, the sons of heaven, looking upon them, said to one another, "Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men and beget us children." The divine beings who joined with the women did not limit themselves to giving life to the giants, but confided the secrets of the universe to men and spread knowledge throughout the world, somewhat like Prometheus did in Greek mythology when he gave knowledge to all men. And to Azazel taught men to make swords and knives, shields and breastplates, and showed them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony for the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones and all coloring tinctures. Semjaza taught spells, Armaros the resolving of spells, Barakijal taught astrology, Kokabel the constellations, Ezekiel the knowledge of the clouds, Arakiel the signs of the earth, Shamziel the signs of the sun, and Sariel the course of the moon. All this, however, displeased the divinities. Moreover, the progeny born from the union between divine beings and men proved to be wicked, and for this reason the divinities decided to eliminate them through a catastrophic event, a universal flood that would have the purpose of erasing their existence forever. The Book of Enoch thus appears as a further piece that composes a larger story. What we have learned from the Book of Enoch we find, for example, in different forms and ways in Sumerian and Babylonian culture, where we find the Annunaki, beings that interact with men and bring knowledge. If in the Book of Enoch divinities join with men and give life to the Nephilim, in Sumerian mythology the Anunnaki create men to serve the gods. Both in Mesopotamian cultures and in the Book of Enoch, this interaction between men and divinities leads to a destructive catastrophe, a universal flood that annihilates everything present on earth. The description of a world in which divine beings interact with humanity. We also find it in Hindu culture, where divinities such as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva play specific roles in maintaining the cosmic order and frequently interact with humans through avatars or incarnations. For example, Vishnu reincarnates several times, including the incarnation as Krishna in the Mahabharata, to restore balance and justice in the world. At this point, we cannot help but wonder if this common narrative also has common origins. If all this is just the fruit of events that occurred in a distant past and that were then elaborated and handed down in cultures all over the world. Returning to the Book of Enoch, here we find the account of divine beings and a part of them, the fallen angels, who fall in love with women and will give life to the race of giants that will lead to the destruction of the world. But the Book of Enoch does not speak only of this. Enoch is represented as a mediator between heaven and earth, receives revelations about the workings of the universe, future events, and the end of all times. We must not, however, imagine the Book of Enoch as a single book, but more as a collection of texts, some of which are older than others. The main sections of the book are 5. The first part is known as the Watchers. Here is narrated of the creator deities and the fallen angels, of the relationship that the angels had with the women, the giants, and the flood that led to the death of all the Nephilim. The second section, called the Book of Parables, contains 3 parables that deal with themes such as divine judgment, the reign of the Messiah, and the figure of the Son of Man, a celestial being who will judge the wicked. Some researchers see in the Son of Man a prefiguration of Jesus and interpret this figure as a prophecy of his coming and his messianic role. This interpretation is also supported by the way in which the New Testament takes up and develops the concept of the Son of Man in relation to Jesus. The third section focuses on cosmology, describing the movement of all celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, and the stars, and provides a detailed calendar based on solar and lunar cycles. The fourth section of the book is called the Dreams. Here Enoch tells Methuselah that he saw in a dream the earth submerged by a great flood, and allegorically retraces the history of humanity. The final section of the collection contains moral exhortations and prophecies about the fate of humanity, including warnings for the righteous and future generations, and concludes with an appendix that narrates the punishment that befell the angels, who joined with the daughters of men. Enoch thus represents the point of mediation between the divinities and men. He represents wisdom and the sharing of knowledge, but his figure goes beyond the Book of Enoch. We find it, for example, in Islamic culture, in the figure of Idris. In Greek culture, it incarnates instead in Hermes. And if we go back in time, we find it in Egyptian culture, where it takes the form of Thoth, god of writing, magic, wisdom, and the moon. Thoth is also considered the inventor of writing, and his wisdom and his power as a mediator between the gods make him one of the most important deities of ancient Egypt. Thoth is also attributed with the creation of the Great Pyramid, and the guardianship of its true original functioning. Thoth is closely linked to divine beings, who in a pre-flood era thrived on an island beyond the Pillars of Hercules in the Atlantic Ocean. Beings of incredible abilities and wisdom who come from the stars and who, after thriving on Earth, found themselves involved in a terrible catastrophe caused by a destructive flood. Starting from the Book of Enoch, we have traveled around the world, and we have seen how all these stories are linked by a single thread, a narrative that leads to a remote era, where a race of divine beings would have descended to Earth and would have given rise to man. At this point, we cannot help but wonder if all this is just a coincidence, or if, instead, all this is part of a shared knowledge of events that occurred in a very distant and dark past. Today, only written testimonies and mysterious architectural works remain, works difficult to explain and that seem to celebrate the splendors of an ancient knowledge. We think that behind these stories there is an ancient and complex story, a story that could rewrite everything we believe we know, but we are curious to know your opinion. Write in the comments what you think, and if you liked the video, do not forget to subscribe to the channel to support our work.